Good morning and welcome to our second Cisilion live webcast event. My name is Rob Quickenden. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Cisilion, and as before, I'm joined as usual by my colleagues and friends. Hopefully they call me that. Iqbal Javaid, who's our Head of Modern Workplace, and Craige Winter-Nolan, who's our Head of New Business. So welcome, thanks everybody. So last week in our first live event, we talked about what we'd seen across the news, and in particular what we'd seen around our customers and how they'd been responding to COVID, and in particular the lockdown. We covered how organisations have been rolling everything out rapidly, trying to mobilise people, get people working from home, turning on new technology, and then the things they were starting to think about around actually securing that environment and kind of moving towards that kind of zero trust approach of making sure everyone does what they do in a safe environment. As we start looking at what's happening now, we're starting to see lots of organisations thinking about returning to work at some point and whatever that's going to look like. I think it's fair to say that given that the UK government doesn't think there's going to be a vaccine at any point this year, I think it's fair to assume that there will be a high level of social distancing still in force across the organisation and the world for the foreseeable future. We've had a number of conversations with customers around what that return to work looks like, how they need to think about where they're going to start refocusing their business. For many of them, that means almost ripping up the strategy they had before and rewriting it, and therefore really thinking about the skills, the expertise and the technology that they need to enforce that new strategy to make sure that they can continue to be the best at their game. In order to do that, of course, businesses need cash. Businesses need money, and right now, 70% of organisations have put staff on furlough, which is obviously causing a strain for their organisations. But at the same point, protecting their organisation, protecting their employees, and making sure that people have got a business to hopefully come back to. So with all of this kind of thinking about, well, how do I do these things? How do I drive forward? How do I start innovating? How do I make sure that when I come back, I can hit the ground running? Or in many cases, how can I start hit the ground running now? The question of where do I get the money from to actually start investing in these things is really key. And I know from just talking to the teams around the organisation that this is a really hot topic now for organisations. They know they need to do more things. They're worried about spending money. They're worried about money coming into the business, and they need capital. So this is really the focus of today. So hopefully this is what you're here to talk about. We're going to cover some of the key areas that we've seen across our customers, and hopefully share with you some of the areas where we're helping our organisations to save money to achieve more. Without further ado, Craige, I'd like to hand over to you if I can, and just ask you. So as someone that runs the new business team within Cisilion, what have you seen? What have your team seen from our customers?
Thank you, Rob. Morning and happy Friday to everyone. Sorry for the slight delayed start as well. And look, Rob, this situation is obviously a global tragedy, and I really hope that everyone's families, friends, colleagues are staying quite safe in these difficult times. This tragedy is also an opportunity for us and our clients, and we're certainly seeing that to improve, learn, and accelerate digital transformation across their business. And now that most of our clients, I'd say fortunately, have steadied themselves, we're seeing an absolutely massive uptake in clients looking for help and looking to leverage certain vendor programs in order to transform and come out the other side. But I'll caveat it that there is a massive catch-22 scenario for almost everyone that I'm speaking to. They want to spend, they want to improve, but their cash flow position simply means that they can't. But we've been showing people recently that that's simply not true. And I know there's a few programs out there that have been for a while, but I'll kick off actually with what I think is probably the most popular with our clients at the moment, which is Cisco Capital. And Cisco have been offering finance packages to enable businesses to spread the cost for many years now with their Easy Lease product, which is still going. And that product means you can invest in high value technology and spread the cost for any period up to 5 years. It's a great tool. It's true 0% interest as well. It's not like the furniture store up the road who inflate the prices of their goods in order to claim 0% for unsuspecting consumers. I'm sure we've all been there. I have recently. But you can also spread the cost with Cisco and defer the payments on any installation services as well as the cost of the kit. It's very much the Bank of Cisco buying market share, and it's a fantastic tool for small, medium and large organizations to take a sensible approach that I've always considered underutilized, right? I think we all have at Cisilion, until recently. The product enables customers to defer any payments for up to 6 months as well. So really using the furniture store analogy, our clients are starting to buy now and pay later. Most interestingly, though, and certainly this could be quite useful for any companies that's looking, within the Easy Lease program, there's a little known facility called sale and leaseback, which means that customers who invested heavily in the past 12 months can even take a cash injection from Cisco for up to the full value of the previous investment. So one client who spent £1 million with us at the start of the year just had £1 million refunded back to them from Cisco, and they'll be paying that £1 million back over a 5-year period at 0% interest and not starting to pay back until I think July, August time. So that's literally a working capital cash injection secured on their current assets, which obviously really helped them out. We typically see, I think, 1 or 2 of these every year, but just in the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've helped 4 different customers with that. So it's clearly very popular, and it's a trend that I expect to continue massively. The main event, though, as it were, is Cisco's business resiliency program, which, in addition to the $200 million Cisco have donated to COVID research, they've now made a $2.5 billion fund available for clients who are struggling to take on Cisco products and services with the most favourable terms I've ever seen from any provider. So they deserve a little call out there, Cisco. And at a high level, the program enables clients to purchase Cisco solutions, pay nothing for up to 3 months, and then pay only 1% of the total value of that kit until 2021. It's a great product, again, that customers of all sizes are starting to leverage. We're actually seeing some customers bringing projects that had been postponed, bringing them back forward again using the facility, because people know that the sooner they start leveraging that product, the more minor 1% payments they're going to make this year. So that's a really savvy move, and it's really helping our clients get solutions in, which will give them a competitive advantage and often case before their rivals. Another great use case we've seen there is maintenance and license renewals. We know that vendors like to offer big discounts for longer term contracts, yet their caveats are often payment up front. So these programs enabling our clients to negotiate favourable discounts for longer term commitments, but ensuring that our clients are only paying monthly, quarterly in some cases, or annually in advance. And look, I won't bang on all morning, because I know, Iqbal, Rob, your teams have also been working miracles, help people reduce spends across cloud, SaaS and other applications. And I guess for me, the lesson is this: CIOs and CFOs are preparing for a recession. PwC, I think, stated recently, just reading a quote here, 67% of CFOs say that they're prepared to reduce costs to counteract the financial impact of the pandemic. Despite this, interesting enough, PwC also say that spending on digital transformation will remain largely intact. Why? Because it's obviously a way for businesses to be successful in this new world, and we can really help CFOs and CIOs mitigate that catch-22 scenario of wanting to take the opportunity but not wanting to overexpose your cash position. So Rob, I know you've been doing great things. Thanks for letting me waffle on. Do you want to tell us how your team's getting on in the cost reduction space as well?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. I think just to add to what you've said on digital transformation, I think it's one of those words that's used all the time and means different things to different organisations. But I think ultimately it is about driving efficiencies in businesses. So I think we see a lot of organisations that have been on a journey for a long time to automate, to simplify, to consolidate everything is that they're doing. And I think we're just seeing a massive acceleration in the demand to do those things. So I was going to touch on a couple of examples, and I know, Iqbal, you've got another couple that we can cover on today. I think for me, one of the things that we've seen is, and we talked last week about the massive surge of cloud computing, right? So any organisation that is not doing cloud is starting to do cloud, either because they kind of got forced into it through deploying Teams and WebEx and Zoom or whatever it is else they're doing, or they've been spinning up huge amounts of resource in public cloud services to allow people to kind of do their job. So we covered some of that last week. What of course that's meant is their costs have gone up. So unless they're taking advantage of free trials, which most organizations aren't, they're in Azure or AWS, or they're using Office 365 or something else, their usage has grown massively, which probably means that their costs have grown massively. We worked with a customer we talked about last week that had literally almost overnight with us deployed virtual desktop in Azure. They've now got something like 2,500 desktops. That's costing money. It's good value, of course it is, but it's costing money they weren't spending before. And they've now got old infrastructure that was sitting in data centers that they're not using because it was never kind of designed to work in that method. So you kind of got that, oh God, I'm paying for things twice. So a large part of the services that we provide is an optimization service, which generally runs on for anyone really using Microsoft Cloud services, but it does go beyond that as well. We do similar services on the Cisco side, for example. And I'll cover it briefly because there's quite a lot to it, and if you're interested in it, please get in touch, and we're happy to talk about it in a bit more detail. But it's really simple. So you would have made a decision around a cloud provider, right? So let's assume for the purpose of this that you're using Azure for your cloud services. We run optimization across two things. So the first is cost optimization, which is we have a look at the way in which you're paying and consuming those cloud services. It's a non-destructive review. We have a look at what you're spending. We have a look at your bills, and we basically save you a whole chunk of money. How much? About 35% typically. We've saved customers, £10,000 a month. We've just signed a contract with another customer that's going to save them over £110,000 a month on their Azure consumption without actually changing the architecture or the infrastructure that they're using. We're just making it a lot cheaper to consume what they're already doing. Some of that's using tools that are already there. Some of that is doing some smart spend with the way they're doing, and some of that is looking at resources that they're using and paying for them over a more efficient time. And that's kind of stage one. There's then a stage two, which needs a little bit more thought, but stage two comes after that, which is about looking at the way the architecture is run. So there are much more efficient ways to structure cloud resources than most organizations realize, because many organizations have started their cloud journey before some of these newer services have become available, and they just get locked into a way of paying for something, and it kind of works, but they're paying for, let's take an example of an organization that's running SQL Server, for example. They might have SQL Server running in Azure. They'll have an IaaS server with a storage rack and some disks and some compute. They'll have Windows Server licenses. They'll have SQL licenses. And actually, by taking that and re-architecting that into what we call platform as a service, we remove a whole chunk of those costs and management from the infrastructure and just provide them with a SQL platform that runs their business for them. And that can save, well in excess of 60% of that spend on one in particular workload. So we're now starting to see the customers that we kind of went through the cost optimization with early on, we're now starting to look at the second side. So that's the first bit I want to say, and I think there is some really big costs to be saved in that space. Do Microsoft care we're doing it? No, I don't think they do, because it's actually generally you're saving organizations money in order to spend more. So they're getting a lot more for a lot less, or at least a lot more for the same. That lends quite nicely onto what we're seeing around CSP. So many of our customers buy licensing through an enterprise agreement, a kind of fixed cost. What do you think you're going to spend over 3 years? You get a massive discount up front and you spend that money. What we've seen with COVID is all of that planning has gone out the window. We have seen organizations furloughing, 40-50% of their staff. And guess what? They're still paying for all those services for all those people that they're not consuming, or they're now consuming services that they weren't consuming before, which they've had to go and pay for, yet they're still consuming the services that they had, which they now don't need. So we've also seen a huge demand in organizations, either in a kind of hybrid way or fully moving over to to a subscription-based service for all of their licensing. And that does two things. One, it enables them to scale as their business scales, both up and down. Secondly, what it does is it lets them turn services off that they're not using, and deploy new services that they now need to serve those new needs of the business. So a couple of examples that we've seen of late of organizations that have got, let's use Microsoft Teams or WebEx or any of those kind of things. Go, well, actually, how do I now get this voice environment that I've got that's on premise that doesn't work remotely to work for everyone that's working at home? Well, cloud enables you to do that, and subscription licensing enables you to turn those things on very, very quickly, even if it's for a short period of time, to try it out, test it, or actually use that as your wider model. We've also seen lots of organizations now starting to think about efficiencies and savings. So how do we start automating a lot more of our business process without going and buying a whole set of things? So we've started seeing organizations looking at things like the Microsoft Power Platform, for example, and thinking about, well, actually, we've got all these people now that are now being tasked with doing things quicker, faster, and cheaper. Maybe they can actually start writing some very, very simple process code, low code, no code, as it's kind of known in the industry, to start automating some of the processes that they do. So we've seen a large move towards that. And again, that requires licensing at a different level. And again, CSP lets these organizations try that out.
And Rob, just going back to something you said then, customers are looking to try it out and test things for short periods. I know Iqbal, that's something you've been heavily engaged in, isn't it? Some of these free trials and leveraging those.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We discussed in the last webinar. There are, the leading vendors out there are offering various levels of free trials and services, particularly from Microsoft and Cisco's perspective, Microsoft are making Teams now available to everybody. They're also offering the business basic license for 6 months, for instance, for many organizations. And likewise, from Cisco's perspective, Cisco have a very comprehensive list of services that they have been helping customers with, and we've been heavily engaged with. We as a Cisco Gold partner are entitled to be able to spin up some of these trial services. So just as an example, when lockdown took place initially, some of the key things that I've seen is where we've spun up a WebEx meeting cloud service for up to 2,000 people, free of charge for 3 months. We've got a customer right now, a law firm, global law firm. They're taking full advantage of that. They haven't paid a penny towards that, but what it's done is that allowed them to fully adopt that capability. And now we're looking at how, when we do get back to the new normal, what could their spend look like? And this is all about understanding the kind of requirements, understanding the types of users they've got, and actually looking at how we can get back to working as we did previously. So those are kind of typical examples where we're seeing. Other than that, increasing capacity. Again, we know a lot of this is happening in the short term. Whether it's a need for additional AnyConnect VPN licenses, just as an example, Cisco are including that. There's also now a need for remote workers working from different devices. So from a Cisco perspective, previously using perpetual licensing, most companies have invested in a single license per user, which means as a user, you're entitled to a physical device and no more than that. But Cisco are now offering what they call Q licensing, which entitles you up to 5 devices per user. And again, for in the short term, we can get users set up so they can use their mobile device, their iPad, their laptop, or even have a physical room device in their house to be able to leverage some of that remote working. So that's, to me, there are obviously there's a lot of tactical things that customers can do, but throwing trials at the problem isn't always the answer. I think it's important to take a step back, and that's what we've been doing now. I think we're at that phase now where we actually starting to plan ahead, and it's great that customers can continue to take advantage of these trials and offers, but longer term, we need to look at how we can be more efficient around what's already been invested in, and that's where the cost saving comes in. And now we're starting to plan ahead. And just as one example, this week I've been working with a retail consumer, a national customer of ours, and their CEO has decided that actually we are going to be video ready when we get back. So that means deploying room endpoints, making sure everybody has access to video services, to ultimately drive down the cost for travel. Their spend over a year is about £4 million, and we're right now helping them quantify the benefits. And we all know the benefits of video. We're all exposed to it now. We get it. Most people understand it. I think it's when you get back to an office environment and seeing the real benefits there, being able to just join a meeting with a touch of a button, not having to think about how you're going to dial this meeting. All of those types of things helps to drive more productivity and ultimately drive down costs.
And gents, it goes so fast on these sessions, doesn't it? We're already 20 minutes in, and I know we want to spend a bit of time talking about some ideas about how customers should be and how we're seeing customers really think strategically about the future. We're going to do a much deeper dive on that next week as well, guys. So if that's part of the agenda you want to see, gents, there's been a couple of questions come in, which maybe we'll cover now before we talk about what the future looks like. What's the minimum and maximum for the Cisco program has come in from a client. I think the minimum for Easy Lease is 0. So that's open to everyone. The business resiliency program does have a minimum hurdle of $50,000, just to be clear, but it's uncapped at the top end. So whether you have a massive project that you need to get in, or something above 50,000, it'll benefit you. How do you know you're turning off the right services? I guess that was about Azure, Rob, and I'll come on. I guess we could wax lyrical about that all day, how we do it. And looking at the time again, I don't think we'll have the time to do it on this, but Rob, no doubt we can do a podcast on that another time. What I'd say, if you've got a big renewal, or you're in a compelling situation where you need to do something immediately, reach out to us. Cisilion Live is the hashtag, Cisilion.com. Our contact details are on there, and after the webinar, Rob's contact details will go out. Rob, I hope you wouldn't mind taking those ones on, but certainly something to talk to Cisilion about if you're keen to know more. Saving money on Azure, this is the third question, Rob, and I'll let you go into this. Saving money on Azure spend sounds great, but how will it impact the IT team?
So it's actually really simple, and like I said, I talked about the two main stages. The primary stage doesn't impact IT at all, which is great. We're not changing the configuration, the allocation of resources. We're simply just changing the way you pay for them. So we're playing around with there's a bit of magic science that goes on behind the scenes, but it's really about looking at what you've got and how you spend it, rather than actually what's it made up of. So that's the second stage. So the second stage is important. That does involve IT. And there are big savings there as well, but the first part of it is purely looking at cost. So where we're saving customers sort of 30, 35, 40% is purely looking at what they're paying for and making them pay for the same things a lot cheaper. So no impact to IT.
Brilliant.
Big impact to budget.
Fantastic. Great answer. And Jen, so I guess just a couple of snippets before next week. Iqbal, I'll start with you. In terms of the main focus areas for people to use these savings to then gain competitive edge, what are you seeing?
I think in terms of looking ahead, which is what we will be focusing on next week, is hopefully we're in a position now where most customers understand what the next steps are, what the strategy is moving forward. If they haven't devise that strategy, then we're helping customers understand what that could look like. Once we've nailed down a strategy, then we can start to think about what's the next best investment around the things that we're doing today. So we know that most customers have either invested or are taking advantage of short-term solutions. In the long term, what more can we do? How can we be more smarter around licensing, consumption, the stuff that we've discussed today as well? From a Cisco perspective, as an example, many customers have bought these services in isolation. They bought voice services with one vendor, a meeting platform from another. Many of these services overlap each other. Now is the time to try and consolidate and really try and build a platform that can deliver true modern workplace to the end user. As it's certainly something that we're seeing happen right now.
So I think to add to that, I think it's sometimes the case of what we said at the beginning about almost ripping up the book and starting again. I think we've seen organisations that have never used, that are used to these silo technologies and have never really used video, and have now either turned on the video that was in the platform that they're already hoping to deploy, or gone and jumped into something else. And I think now that video, I think, is going to be part of everyone's lives. I think, Iqbal, you talked earlier about kind of some of these huge travel bills that organisations have. We will be doing less travel, if not for forever, at least for the next 12, 18 months, as organisations want to do less travelling, both internally and internationally. So that's going to drive video massively. Back to what you said about meeting rooms, back to what you said about kind of converged platforms. So all of that requires a strategy. And I think, probably good time to wrap up, because I'm kind of conscious of time, is, in order to do that, take advantage of some of these cost savings. They're really good. They're backed by companies that have got a lot of money, have got a lot of market share, and they really do generally want to help you transform and evolve, and stay in business.
Yeah. Cheers, Rob. Cheers, Iqbal. And Rob, that pitch was so strong, I might get you into the sales team before the next call, because you're right, that the money's there to support people. So just a quick one before wrap up. So something I've seen, particularly in financial services and legal, network segmentation to protect data. People are spending a lot of money there, or looking to spend a lot of money, and certainly securing software-defined and more application-centric networks going forward for the future to support that innovation. We all know the front end and applications are great, but they're only as good, we're hearing, as the network that they're transitioning over, and they're only as secure as that network as well. So we're seeing a lot of inquiries there. But gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure again. Thanks for all of the questions that have come over. As we said, we're going to talk about more next week, where organizations are thinking of reinvesting their monies. So if you'd like to ask us a specific question in the next week, feel free to drop us a note on LinkedIn using the hashtag Cisilion Live. Let us know your top 3 priorities. What are you guys thinking about? And we can help you understand those areas, and whether or not there's a chance for you to take advantage of Rob, Iqbal, and my own cost-cutting initiatives in order to help your business transform. So, guys, thank you so much for joining. As always, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
See you next week. Thank you.
See you next week. As always, stay safe, stay well, and we'll keep helping businesses transform through next generation innovative infrastructure. Thank you.